what I was really inspired by in this really weird way was Boris's roadmap out of lockdown. Suddenly every single plan that we were making was tied up to these dates where, okay, the 12th of April I can get a haircut, like the 17th of May I may be able to go on holiday. And so on the top of each of the monuments or benches is engraved in Roman numerals the sort of date that each of these restrictions ended, to sort of celebrate this coming together of people and a sort of return back to normal life.
Earlier this year, the LFA launched the 4th edition of the City Benches competition, a design competition in collaboration with Cheapside Business Alliance and Aldgate Connect Bid. The competition looked to transform Cheapside and Aldgate streetscape with imaginative and witty takes on much-needed public seating. We caught up with each of the winning designers to find out the story behind the benches. Here, Sohanna tells us about her bench, Monument to Mingling.
My name's Sohanna and my benches are called Monuments to Mingling. I was initially inspired to enter the competition because I was really excited about the fact that there were new sites in Aldgate this year, and that was something that I found really exciting. It's such an interesting area with such a diverse community, and I really wanted to reflect that in the design of the benches. I've spent a lot of time in Aldgate. I think it's a really interesting area just because of its sort of history. It used to be one of the oldest and busiest gatehouses into London, and it has this Roman history with the old Roman wall and the Roman gate. But then it's also at this sort of threshold space in between the city and city workers, and then obviously Whitechapel, which has a really amazing diverse community all the way from Brick Lane and the East London Mosque. So I really wanted to create something that reflected all of Aldgate's identities and fused them together to create something that perhaps were new symbols of tolerance or identity or a shared communal sense of belonging, I guess, in a way that we haven't really been able to experience this last year because it's been so difficult and so disconnected. So it was really about creating benches that brought people together, but then also reflected this really unique place that Aldgate is in terms of identity and its communities. So I picked architectural motifs from the sort of three main identities of Aldgate itself. So I looked at old designs for the Roman gate, which doesn't stand anymore, but I was able to find pictures online. So I used that as a sort of nod to the area's Roman past. And then I was really interested in the Aldgate pump. In the olden times, it used to be this place for gathering. Everyone would come around the pump to sort of collect water, etc. And so it was really symbolic of this a place of gathering, which is obviously what I was looking at with the benches. And it also signified the sort of gate into London. So it was the end of East London and the start of the City of London. And I liked, because I was working with thresholds and junctions, I really liked that it was very symbolic of that junction. And then I chose East London Mosque because I thought it's this amazing building. It's the sort of heartbeat of that diverse community in Whitechapel. And again, it's this place for gathering. So all three of the monuments that I've chosen to integrate into the design of the benches have been in their own right sort of places for gathering, places for the community to come together. So I choose to use timber primarily because of its sustainability, but also because I really liked the idea of using something that was really cost effective. So making something quite ornate and quite decorative and ornamental, but using a really, really simple material that was easy to cut, to carve, to paint, to spray and finish. It's a material that I haven't really worked very much with before, and I'm really lucky to have collaborated with Ollie from Joyce and Joinery. He's a brilliant fabricator, really, really experienced in working with timber, and usually specialises in cabinets and kitchen furniture and things. So he was really excited to do something with the same material, but in a completely different way and for the outdoors. So it's been really nice working with someone who has a really good understanding of the material and then sort of fusing that together with my sort of ideas for the design. So the idea of mingling was really, really important when I was designing the benches. I think after a long lockdown of, not being able to see my friends, not being able to see family, and everyone having this shared experience of feeling really disconnected from, a hug or a drink at the pub with your mates, I thought it was really important to bring this idea of mingling and coming together, because this summer, I think, really symbolises one where we'll finally be able to meet our friends again and to hug our family, for example. And so what I was really inspired by in this really weird way was Boris's roadmap out of lockdown. Suddenly every single plan that we were making was tied up to these dates that became these important milestones that were imprinted in our minds where, okay, the 12th of April I can get a haircut, like the 17th of May I may be able to go on holiday, and on the 21st of June I can actually hug my friends. And so on the top of each of the monuments or benches is engraved in Roman numerals the sort of date that each of these restrictions ended, to sort of celebrate this coming together of people and a sort of return back to normal life. The benches are a celebration, as I've said, about people coming together, about lockdown ending, but they're also a celebration of Mary Vaughan Johnson. She was my brilliant, brilliant teaching partner at Kingston University, and she's sadly not with us anymore. So it was really about celebrating her life. She really fought for diversity. She was a brilliant educator, and as much as they're a celebration of people coming together, it's also about the sort of things that she was really looking forward to doing. And I'm sure she would have absolutely loved to have a glass of red wine, her favourite drink, on one of the benches. So they're really about celebrating her as well. I would hope the impact of the benches, I guess, really encourage conversations between different communities. So the hope is that through using different architectural styles and motifs from Aldgate's various identities and histories, the idea that you perhaps recognise something similar to what you're used to seeing in your culture, but see it sort of next to something that is perhaps quite unfamiliar, sort of encourages conversations between different people. And, the most amazing thing would be if someone perhaps tried a samosa on Eid because another family was there, for example, or tried something new, or had a chat, or sat next to someone that was perhaps from a different community. And I think I'd really hope that through the fusing of architectural motifs and the remixing of all these different styles into these three monuments, that we can actually really start to encourage different conversations between Aldgate, which is an amazingly diverse place in itself.
You've been listening to Building Sounds. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more of our recent conversation, search for Building Sounds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favourite podcast.